Okay, I guess we can begin. So we have with us a very special guest, Rabbi Wernick. We all know, one of our most sought after teachers. And this is Rabbi Wernick's son, is a scribe, in Hebrew, a sefer. And Rabbi Wernick is going to give us a presentation on Jewish scribal arts, which is a very specialized field. Many people think that all rabbis can do everything. So we do weddings, we're circumcisers, we're sheichets, we slaughter, we write the Torah scroll, we check your mezuzahs. People think that all rabbis know everything. Really, that rabbis are generally they just have their area of expertise, or some of them are just general practitioners. But many rabbis have specialized fields, and the field of Jewish scribal arts, to be a sefer, takes a tremendous amount of studying and concentration and patience. And so we have with us Rabbi Shlomo Wernick, who has been practicing as a scribe for many years, and he lives in Walnut Creek, Florida, and I believe he's written numerous Megillas and probably numerous mezuzahs in his life, probably worked on many Sefer Torahs. So with no further ado, Rabbi Shlomo Wernick.
Thank you very much. So, I'm going to start by showing you a mezuzah, which I actually wrote this morning. Here.
It's a big mezuzah.
Yeah. You can see.
Beautiful. There we go.
Yeah.
Is it up for sale?
It is, actually. We can talk about that later. On the back, actually, before we get to the back, let's talk about the front. So, on this, you can, I think it's backwards when it gets to the camera.
No, it's okay.
No, it's fine.
It's the right way?
Right.
Okay, I see it backwards. Anyway, so here it says Shema. Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, yeah. That's the first paragraph of Shema. Those of you that do the davening, you're probably familiar with that. And the second paragraph is V'hoya im Shamoah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a big Dalet.
The big Dalet and the big Ayin.
To stretch it out a little.
Yeah. This Dalet is actually the size of 4 Dalets.
Oh.
It's meant to be the size of 4 Dalets. The Dalet itself is the numerical value of 4, which, which when we read Shema in the morning, we want to think about the 4 corners of the world, of the universe, and that Hashem fills all 4 corners of the earth. The big ayin, you can see at the beginning, there's a big ayin. That ayin is actually numerical value of 70, which actually corresponds to the 70 nations of the world. So all 70 nations in the world are actually all part of our journey. We are obviously the chosen people, but all 70 nations have their part, and they also have their mission in completing Hashem's mission, which was to make a godly home for Hashem himself. Another interesting thing, the ayin and the dalet together make the word aid, which is a witness, which every time we say the Shema, we are testifying that that Hashem created the world. Actually, an interesting thing here, if you see, in between the two paragraphs, there's an open space on both sides. There was a dispute between two of the early sages, how exactly we do it. You see, in the Torah, there's two types of paragraph spacing. There's a psucha and a stuma, which means that there's sometimes the paragraph finishes in the middle of the line and continues on the next line. That's called an open paragraph. And sometimes we have a stuma, which means a closed paragraph. So there'll just be a space of 9 letters, and then we'll continue on that same line. Now here we have a problem, because each paragraph the next paragraph has to start on the next line. We don't start the next paragraph on the same line. The same thing in the tefillin. I'm going to show you soon. I have a whole set of tefillin. But here, because it has to be on the second line, so some people write this all the way at the end and leave this open 9 letters. Our custom, some people leave a small space on both ends. Our custom is that we leave a big space on both ends. It's open from one line and open from the next line. And that's considered, according to our custom, that's considered a closed paragraph. What else? On the back, we have here, you could see Shin, Dalet, and the Yud. That is one of the names of Hashem. That's a specific name that Hashem is obviously infinite and beyond all definitions. So for us to give him a name is not really a compliment, but the names that we have are ways for us to connect with Hashem. So one of the ways that we connect with Hashem is that we look at Hashem as our protector. And this name, the Shin and the Dalet and the Yud together it stands for Shomer Delasois Yisrael, which means that Hashem protects the doors of Israel. And this concept was also in the story of Pesach, when we put the blood on the doorpost, and Hashem didn't go in there to destroy the firstborns. Actually, I'll tell you a story, a local story, happened recently. I actually met a lot of the people that this story happened to. It didn't happen so far from here. It happened in Cape Coral. A couple of weeks ago, they got hit by a hurricane. So actually, the rabbi there was telling a lot of stories. I was there, I was the chazan on Yom Kippur, and he was saying that his house, not just his house, the house where they have another house where they have the mikveh and they have the shul, and there were a lot of congregants, and they all said one thing: Rabbi, your mezuzah saved my life. And not only did it save their life, actually, that their house didn't even get wet. The water went up to the doorstep and stopped. And I heard the story from numerous people. They all said the same story. The water got up to the doorpost, and that was it. In the shul there had a little bit of water, and the first maybe 10 feet was a little bit wet, but nothing a mop couldn't fix in 2.25 minutes. And that was it. So it's mezuzah is very powerful. There's actually two aspects in the mezuzah. There's the halachic issue, and then there's also the segula issue, which is the protection. So,
Rabbi, did you say the water got up to the doorstep or to the door post?
no, to the step, to the door. The water didn't go in. It touched just the step. One guy, his garage got full exactly up until there was like a step up to go into the actual house. The whole garage was full, about 20 inches, 5-10 inches, however high the step is. And then, but his house was dry.
You got to tell him to buy a mezuzah for his garage.
Yeah.
A step is usually
No, he
7
said he
inches.
didn't have anything in the garage, so I guess anyway, we should talk to him after the anyways. But
Was a kosher mezuzah, that's why.
yeah.
So maybe Rabbi Wernick, maybe you could like begin with telling us a little like where how mezuzah is made, just a little
Right.
about the parchment and about the ink and how long it takes to write it and so on.
This was actually a feather. You can see it still has a little bit of the hairs, the feathers from.
Yeah.
We actually, I like to clean it up so it's nice and easy to work with. It's kind of like a pen, just different. Everything is kind of like exactly the same, just different. But so when we
What's the
What
feather
word
from?
is it from?
there's actually the end. I have a diagram here. This is actually so basically it starts. It's a tube, basically a tube, but we trim it down using surgical blades. Nowadays we actually have a lot of disposable surgical blades. You can buy them on Amazon for pretty cheap. That's not something that's halachic. The blade is just a practical thing. You trim it down, and then we trim down the sides, and we make it the right size. The tip, we make it the right size. The actual thing looks like this. You can see this is the way we cut it because we need to, it's writing with a feather. In general, calligraphy is it's not like a point pen. It's not like a dot, and you want to use the whole. So when you're writing with this, what we do is we make a little line, and then you put the whole pen down, and you go there. If you want to make, and then when you go down, so let's say like the letter bet is a thick line, a skinny line, and then a thick line, which basically, and the bottom line sticks out a little bit. But that's basically, we do it with this. I personally like to make a little indent here, just to make it more pointy on the edges, so I have better control over the ink. And then in the middle, you can see here is actually a slit, which we make with a razor blade, and that it helps the air pressure for the ink to flow. It's kind of like a little tap. We use that because you can kind of like just press down on it, the ink flows through that there. So what's next?
So in other words,
Yes.
do you want it to be like a thick tip? You want a thicker tip so that you can write a letter without filling in the ink inside, that one line fills the entire thickness of the line? Is that why you want it to be so thick?
So generally, you want it to be like boxy letters, but I'm just drawing now a bet with my pen. There, you can see that.
Yes.
So the thick line, how do you get the thick line? You do it by putting this down. Both points, you put them both down and you draw the straight. You hold the kulmus. The pen is called a kulmus. You hold the pen, the quill straight, and you draw the line. This line here, and then you hold it, keep holding it the same position, and you go down, and you end up with a skinny line, and then you go again from here and make a big line, a thick line again. The space in between here should be similar spacing to here, so it'll be kind of like if you would do it, just you keep everything symmetrical, so you basically have like a box of 9 by 9 or 3 by 3, so 9, like kind of like this. I just scribbled that, but basically you want to fit each letter into that kind of system.
Size.
That yeah, that way, and when you're practicing, you want to keep that in mind, because letters like a shin, an aleph, an ayin, and a bet, they all have to fit into that.
Box.
They all have to fit in that box, and that way you end up with nice lines, straight lines. Like, see the straight lines. If you look very, very carefully, you can see, I don't know if you can see it. You see there's lines there. Those lines are not made with ink. The lines are made with a, like a pick, a needle, or some people, I think in Morocco, they used to do it with the thumbnail. But you can do it with anything, as long as you have to say each time you do it, you have to each line that you make, we say l'shem kedushas. Anything that we do, we say l'shem kedushas, for the sake of we're doing it for the holiness of the mitzvah of tefillin or mezuzah or whatever we're doing.
Rabbi, can you see the hands? I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
yeah.
What birds can you use the feathers from what bird?
Which bird? So
Yeah.
that's not a halachic question. I mean, halachically, it has to be kosher, but that's it.
I see. Okay. So it's your choice.
Yeah. The thing is that you don't want to use like a little chicken because it's going to be too small, and by the time you
Right.
make something out of it, it'll be very flimsy. Generally, now it's becoming very popular to use turkey feathers. This is a turkey feather.
Looks
Rabbi,
like
could
a
I
white
ask you, do you
turkey.
deal in picas? How do you do your measurement? You deal in picas, or you just, is it by hand, in other words, by your eye?
What do you mean? To measure the lines?
In other words, in other words, a line, when you do a mezuzah, depending on the size of the scroll, you have to figure out how the letters are going to fit on the line,
Yeah.
size and whatever. So what measurement do you use?
So actually, I have
I'm
a.
sorry to ask you this, just that it's.
So actually, I work with this. This is called a tikkun. This is basically a printed version of the mezuzah, which is obviously not kosher. But what we do with this is that we copy it. We make it exactly like this. But we also have the lines which are scorched into the parchment.
Right.
They're done with machines.
Right, I understand what that is. Yeah,
The scorching is done by hand, but they put it on like a architect's table, and they have the big rulers,
right.
and they.
Parallel bars, right, exactly. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So the parchment is actually hide. It comes from, these come from baby calves. The best type of parchment is actually from unborn. One that hasn't even been in the world but yet. It's just pure from its mother's womb. It's actually quite common that they start butchering the cow and they find there's a little fetus in there. And it happens around 1 in 10 will have something in there. And they'll actually, that's the most holy part of the cow. But we can use any skin. The only problem is that the more it grows up, it gets very rough. And when it's rough, it's the ink starts to kind of drip because it's never perfect. So you always end up with the harder it gets, the harder it is to make it nice flat surface.
So how many mezuzahs can they get out of one little unborn fetus?
You take the whole thing, you can get around 8. This size you get around 8. This is a 8-inch, so you'll get around 8 mezuzahs. The smaller ones you can get 12, 15. The really small ones, like the 2-inch, 3-inch mezuzahs, they could probably get, I don't know, 50. But anyway, so where are we up to?
Rabbi, one more question. Every
Yeah.
line that when you begin a line, you say a prayer. And when you finish the line, and when you finish the paragraph, you end it with another prayer. Is that correct?
There's a lot of prayers that different Sofrim scribes different they say. That's all. It's not halachic.
Okay.
The only thing that's halachic is that we have to say that I'm writing for the holiness of a mezuzah.
Okay.
That's the only thing that's halachic, and you have to maintain that in intention form throughout the whole writing.
Is a pen?
Interruptions, when you get interrupted while you're writing, is that is that bothersome?
Yeah, so if you get interrupted, that's okay. But you just, before you start writing again, you have to say again that I'm writing. You shouldn't forget that you're writing for the sake of the holiness of the mitzvah.
Okay, thank you.
And what about writing with a pen, with a metal pen?
So nowadays there's actually a lot of different options, but metal specifically is one that we don't use because metal is something that we make instruments for war out of. So metal specifically we don't use. Some people, Sephardim say that aluminium is not considered metal, so they have aluminium. They say that it's only specifically barzel, which is iron, and aluminium they use. We don't use. What is slowly creeping its way into the market is ceramic. There is plastic also. Plastic, technically it's kosher. Some people prefer not to use it. Some people say that it's, on the contrary, you should use it because it'll come out nicer.
One more question about the ink.
Yeah.
About the ink.
Oh,
Where is the ink from, and is it permeable? And if it's too thick, are you allowed to add water? What? Tell me.
Yeah, we add water.
Okay.
The ingredients for the ink are not specific ingredients. There are 3 specific ingredients that we use, but they're variable and you could add stuff to them, and that's not, it's more a practicality issue. The 3 things that we have are called afotzim and kankantim. Afotzim is like a type of berry, specific type of berry that we use. Most scribes nowadays won't make ink at home. It's not, we buy it in the store together with the parchment. We just go and buy the, you buy everything pretty much from one store for convenience. And that way you can, what else? So it's kankantum is it's like a copper kind of. I don't know exactly what it is because
Something gallnut juice or something.
walnut, yeah, that's the afotzim, and the kankantum is it's the kind of like copper water, copper. And that's basically the two together form a chemical reaction which makes the ink turn black. The gallnut by itself is like a brownish color, and when you add in there's another thing which you can add, which is smoked oil, or basically they'll put all the oil in a glass container, and they'll
They translate here kankantum as copper sulfate.
yeah.
Rabbi, where did you learn to do all of this? Where did you go to school to learn all this?
So the truth is,
Don't tell me from the street. No, don't tell me that. Please.
no. To make I never tried making ink. I never tried making ink, but it's in the books. When you study, you have to learn it all, but we never actually made ink, and I never made parchment myself. I was a couple times thinking about it, but not very practical.
Yeah, very involved. Yeah. One time I made homemade paper. What a pain. Just plain regular paper from cloth. It took weeks to get one. I mean,
Wow.
you know how you go crazy about doing things. You want the purest and the best. And the purity is the most difficult part. That's why I'm asking you all these questions. I'm sorry if I'm making.
Yeah, sure. So
Rabbi, what if a scribe went into Office Max and just bought a bottle of ink? What would happen?
So it depends what the ink is made out of. We do make the ink for the sake of the mitzvah, but that's not technically, halachically, it's not necessary. It's just an extra thing that we started to do. But you just have to check that the ink is kosher. Make sure that all the ingredients are kosher. There are some opinions that say that it has to specifically have the gallnuts in it. So if you get stuck on an island and that's all you have, then you would just add a few gallnuts to the ink and mix it around, and that would be kosher. But the truth is, practically speaking, we would want the ink that we buy is made for writing on parchment specifically, and that has a consistency of writing on parchment. So that's what we use. But what are we talking about? Yeah.
How long does it take you to do like the one that you showed us? How long?
That mezuzah?
Yes, please.
A couple hours.
What? That's all?
Yeah.
How long have you been doing this?
About 7 years.
Oh my God, you're incredible. Wow. Wow,
Uh,
that's incredible. 2 hours to do, oh,
Can I ask you, is it, the text is actually the same in all of the writing that you do?
All the mezuzahs are the
Yes.
same text, yeah.
Yes, that's why. What is more difficult, to make a very small print that is for a small size mezuzah, or a large one where, details are more?
Some people prefer writing big and some people prefer writing small. The same way in any artwork, you would have some people that have specifically artwork. Some people like making massive paintings that take up the whole wall, and some people like to work on a small canvas. There is actually a Kabbalistic explanation to that from the Ben Ish Chai, who was, but we're not going to get into that in this lecture. Maybe we could have another lecture. What I wanted to show you now is the scrolls for the tefillin. So it's actually a very long scroll because this has 4. You could see in the third one is the Shema. The next one is V'hayim Shema. Before that, there's 2 other passages where it talks about the mitzvah of wearing tefillin. This is about, it ends up being around 70 centimeters long, which is probably about 20 something inches. But all 4 passages are on one parchment. In the Shalroish, the head tefillin, all 4 are on separate parchments. So you'll have here 1. That's just one passage, and then 2. This one is written on 4 lines, and the other one had 7 lines. There's the Shema, and here is another passage there. You'll see also, I'm going to show you now the box. The box, we can talk about the box in a minute, but first you see that the head tefillin actually has 4 separate boxes. Now all of these boxes are actually made of the same skin, and you can see the bottom of it, it's all one piece of skin. The whole thing is one piece. One piece, they basically like not puncture, they just like press. They make like kind of nubs out of them. 4 nubs, and then they square them out and squish them together. So you end up with 4 kind of rectangle boxes. Another interesting thing here, if you see the shin actually has 3 heads on one side and 4 heads on the other side. And if you look closely, there's actually 12 holes. These holes are for sewing it up. Actually, there's this. This is my wife's wig. Just kidding. This is actually the tail of a calf.
Rabbi, do the 12 holes stand
Yeah.
for the 12
Yeah,
tribes?
So the 12 holes stand for the 12 tribes. The 3 shin is for the 3 patriarchs. The 4 shin is for the 4 matriarchs. And the strap, the way the strap is tied, it kind of goes around the head, and then it goes around. It's like someone's coming from behind and grabbing you over the shoulders and guiding you. And that's why we put specifically the hand tefillin we put level with the heart, and the head tefillin we put level with level with our mind. You have a question?
Yeah. The parchment that you use, is it always from a cow, or is it sometimes from sheep or goats? Or
Goats actually used to be very popular.
oh,
Nowadays, it's not practical because they're too small and it's too much work. But apparently, deer skin is actually very good quality. But again, that's not something that's commercial.
Okay, so it's not just one animal, but any kosher animal.
Any kosher animal. Actually, I saw a picture of a mezuzah from Africa that was written on a giraffe.
Yeah.
So that is a thing, but it's not, generally speaking, for a commercial sofer, it's not practical.
Yeah. How
So
difficult is it to correct the Torah if there's a tear or something?
yeah, so tear. So 1 second, let me show you the. Where is it? We have actually sinews here. Sew it up with sinews. So, you know when you eat like a steak and you have the little bone, and then you have also like a little white piece of like it looks like fat, but it's very chewy.
Okay, yeah.
Gristle, like the gristle.
Not the gristle, it's like a white chewy thing.
Yeah,
Inside the bone?
it's a
Inside the
ligament.
bone?
It's a
Not
ligament.
inside the bone.
It's a ligament that holds the muscles
Yeah,
together.
it's a ligament. So that they actually take that, they pull it out lengthways, so you have the long strip.
Would that be kosher, Rabbi?
It's kosher, yeah. We take it from a
Oh,
kosher.
kosher. Would that be what we call kosher? It's like a white thing and it's very stretchy and chewy and you can
Yeah,
eat it.
yeah, that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Rabbi, Bradley,
dry that out.
Bradley has a question.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. Hi, thank you. I appreciate that. No, I appreciate all this great knowledge about the inside of the tefillin. That was really amazing. I just have 2 quick questions. How often and why does the tefillin have to be checked? Like, why does it have to be checked, and how often does it have to be checked?
right. So the thing is that it's all handmade, which is very good and nice and holy. You have holy thoughts. The machine doesn't really have thoughts, but at the same time, bearing in mind that everything is all handmade, and the parchment is natural, fresh hide from an animal, so that can stretch. It gets bigger and smaller with the change of season. So what happens is, especially if someone has a mezuzah which is, let's say, his front door gets a lot of sunlight, or a person sweats, that can affect the parchment because it's natural. It's not plastic. It's a real living thing. It's hide. It comes from the way Hashem created it. So that can stretch, and what can happen is if it gets stretched, then the ink can fall off, because the ink that we use actually has substance. We're writing, it's not like a pen that's just color. This has a substance, and if the hide gets bigger and smaller with the change of season, it probably won't happen once, but if after 10 years or 20 years, it can happen. And people that like to be extra stringent and cautious and make sure that the tefillin are always perfect, they like to get it checked once a year.
It can crack too when you stretch it.
Yeah. Sometimes, so that's why when we check it, we have to be very careful. We take it out
Thank
very
you.
gently.
Thank you.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
what did you say they use the kosher for, that ligament?
Yeah, for sewing this up. We also use it to sew up. So what they do, they dry it out and bang it until it becomes like a thread. They dry it out until it becomes like a wood-like almost, and then they bang it, and then they weave that into thread. And we buy personally, or not just me personally, pretty much all commercial scribes will just buy a roll like this with 80 feet, 100 feet, and that's it.
I'm sorry, there was a call coming in which blocked your answer earlier. I was asking about what the casa was used for, if that was used to write.
No, we use it to sew up the tefillin, to sew it up, and also to sew up the Torah scroll.
Oh, I see.
That's why
Okay,
these holes are there, to sew, to keep the two, because to keep it closed.
I see. Thank you.
Sure. What else didn't we cover?
But you never said where you learned this. How did you learn all of this? Am I not allowed to ask that, or?
It's, no, well, I learned in
you went
Israel,
to a-
but what I learned and what most scribes will learn practically is just how to write, maybe how to sew up, but that's already a different industry. Most scribes that write will just have a little desk and they'll just write, and that's all they do all day. They just come, the parchment's prepared, the ink is prepared, all they do is just cut a quill and start writing. And they'll do that for a couple hours a day, write maybe a mezuzah and a half, and that's basically it. You'll have people that work in the factory where they make the boxes, which is a whole nother industry. The boxes are a different type of, it's a much stronger skin. It comes from the back of the neck of the cow. And it takes a long time because but they tan it and it becomes very hard. So then they have to soak it in water. Nowadays we add a few chemicals just to make the process a little bit easier. And also the finished product, you'll be able, because we put in chemicals, you'll be able to use harder hide, which will make the finished product much stronger. In the olden days, they used to use very soft hide, and then they would have to let it dry out for a long time, and even still, it was very delicate.
Rabbi, 2 questions real fast.
Yeah.
One is, so do you end up being an apprentice for how long before you actually write your first mezuzah?
So
The second question was, again, tell us the minimum for checking it to fill in and the minimum for checking mezuzah.
Right. So what was your first question?
Apprentice.
Yeah, so it doesn't really, I mean, we won't actually write anything until you're competent. So you'll just be practicing making letters and letters and letters. The next thing we'll do is write a Megillah, which I actually have a Megillah here. So this is a Megillah which I'm in the middle of writing. See that? Big enough?
Yeah.
That's why they call it the Big Megillah.
Yeah.
Which Megillah is it? Megillat Esther?
It's there, yeah. So you can see someone asked before about the corrections. So you can see there's actually a couple of things that need correction. They're actually in the middle of correcting. So the first thing I'll do is, while it's still wet, I'll soak up the ink with a tissue. That doesn't actually achieve anything, halachically speaking, but it'll absorb most of the substance of the ink. If not, we have to scratch it off. once you scratched off the substance, so I have personally an electric pencil eraser, which is very good. I have a special rubber, which is a little bit rougher than what we usually use for a pencil. It's made out of like seeds. I don't know exactly, but the old-fashioned way was sandpaper or rocks. I guess they used to use in the olden days, and you just sand it down until you get rid of the remnants, and then you got to start another process, which is you got to get finer sandpaper and try and fix the area so that you can rewrite whatever you were meant to write on top of it.
Does it matter what is the material used for the outside of mezuzah? Because I saw so many glass and plastic and ceramics and metal and you name it. Does it really make any difference? Or is it anything that is supposed to be used for the outside?
So for the mezuzah case, the tefillin case, the actual, this thing has a lot of laws, but the mezuzah case doesn't have any laws. The only thing that we don't do is use metal, specifically metal, again, because metal is what we use to prepare instruments of war. But I was actually someone who had a mezuzah on his door, and it wasn't doing the trick for some reason. Like things weren't going as well as they could have been going. And they wrote to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he actually told them that they should, that the halachic mezuzah, they fulfilled the mitzvah halachically, but the protection doesn't go through instruments of war. So it has to, they should take off the metal case, and they should put I guess, but the most ancient one was glass. It used to be that they would make like, you could still see nowadays, if you go to Israel, you'll see a lot of the doors have kind of like an indent, they drilled kind of in the door and make a space for the mezuzah. So the Shulchan Aruch, who was in Israel, it was around 400 years ago, the Beis Yosef, he writes, Rabbi Yosef Karo, he writes that you should put glass on top to protect it. So that's the first source, basically, of, and the reason why we need to protect it is because people touch it, because when they go through the door, they like to touch, and some people kiss it, so what happens is actually the name on the back, the shin, the dalet, and the yud, will eventually get erased from touching every day. So that's why he says you should put glass.
And if you found out that the text is damaged or something is not correct, that's all of this is replaced, or it's corrected on the same parchment?
So it depends what's wrong with it. If it's something which makes it puzzle, then that's a problem. And you're not allowed to fix it because it has to be written in order. And since you already wrote the letter after where the problem was, you're not allowed to fix it.
Oh, it's good to know. What about ketubas? Are you writing?
So ketubas are I do write them upon request, but it's not it's not a halachic thing. The only thing that's halachic about the ketubah will be the witness's signature.
Oh, it's interesting, yeah.
Usually the witnesses on the ketubah will just sign with a pen because again, actually on a get, the divorce document, that has a lot of laws, and that is actually something which even the witnesses have to write with a pen, with a quill. And,
Oh, that's
Rabbi,
interesting. Thank you.
Rabbi,
yeah,
how often do you have to check the tefillin?
check them.
And what are those?
So the
What are those
mezuzahs,
things that can go? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah. So the mezuzahs we check twice in 7 years. Some people check them every single year to be extra careful. If you live in a place where it's either very hot or very cold, or you have a lot of humidity, you might want to get it checked more often. If you know that you have a specific mezuzah which gets a lot of sunlight, then you might want to get it checked. Another thing you can do is actually put inside the mezuzah case, you can put a cloth inside to wrap it up. That'll kind of stop the sunlight from shining on it. Some people wrap it up in like hard, heavy plastic. I haven't seen that makes a difference. But what I can tell you is that I used to live in Arizona, and I got a couple of mezuzahs. It happened probably 5 or 6 times that I got a mezuzah, and you just open it up and it crumbles because of the heat, the sun that was baking on it for years and years. The tefillin, since we use the tefillin every day, and we're always keeping it usually in a civilized place. It's not like on the front door of your house where it's always open to the atmosphere of the world. So the weather and extreme weather, the tefillin is generally kept indoors, and generally we use them every day. But if you have a pair of tefillin that hasn't been used in a while, it just sat on the shelf for a long time, then you might want to get it checked. Also, if you have a reason why you would want to get it checked, you should get it checked. Also, very important not to leave your tefillin in the car, because the car can get very hot, and that can also cause damage. From my experience, heat is actually much more damaging than wet. Wet can cause damage, but generally speaking, it's maybe a mark, but it then generally won't become puzzle if you catch it early enough. But heat, I've seen after a few months, it just turns, it totally cracks and becomes dry. Actually, I had a whole box of stuff weather damaged, but I actually put it in for burial. That's what we do with all the stuff that is not kosher. We put it in burial.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
is there a specific, when you get to tefillin, can you request, let's say if you're in Eretz Yisrael or wherever, and a sofer, you speak with a sofer, and you can have the parchment, can you request the kind of parchment that you want, or the kind of ink to prolong the life of the parchment
Yeah, so you can request anything that you like, and
which is the longest?
It's the
Stretches
thing.
out the long.
Anything that's not standard is it's not commercially produced, so it will get a little bit costly generally. But you can always request. Asking is free. But But obviously the sofer will have his time and his expertise, or they might. But if someone is up for the challenge, then and you can afford it, then go for it. One more thing which we didn't talk about is the straps. These straps are leather from a cow. It comes in a long roll. So basically they'll take like a massive, like a 10-foot piece of skin from a cow, and they'll do a round cut. They'll cut round and round and round and round and round and round and round. You end up with around 300-400 feet of the around and around and around. And that so it goes into a straightening, or they kind of put it on a roll and straighten it out. And then it goes on they'll take like a little piece of wood, like a little square, and they'll wrap it tightly over the wood. So that keeps it nice and fresh. And then we cut around, it's around 20 feet total. It's around 12 and a half feet for the hand to fill in. You don't realize how long it takes. It's actually around like 12 feet. A little bit more, like 12, 13 feet for the hand. And it's around another like 8, 9 feet for the head to fill in. Any other questions?
Yes, on the Megillah, if you wrote a Megillat Esther on parchment that's about 10 to 12 inches high, how long would that parchment be, or need to be?
The Megillah is allowed to be, you can play around with it. The Sefer Torah, we specifically have
A measurement?
it has to be specific. It doesn't have to be, but the custom is that we make it specifically out of with 42 lines. A Megillah, you can play around with it. If you want it to be smaller, you want to have a nice impact, so you can make it out of 11 lines.
And how long will that parchment
actually
be?
saw a Megillah. It was about this big, literally about like 2 inches, with 11 lines.
You have to have good eyesight for that one.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about 10, 12
It
inches.
fits in your
high.
pocket.
Yeah, about 10, 12 inches high. Would it be what, 1 meter long, or 3 feet, 4 feet long?
So this one is going to be around 10 feet long.
10 feet long. Oh, that's long.
Yeah.
And how thick is the parchment? I want to know if you roll it up, like because I have a wooden housing. I wonder if I can fit something in there. Do you know how thin that parchment is?
When you roll it up,
Okay.
depends on the size of it, but
What you showed me is like a Torah. It's not.
yeah. So Torah has 62 sheets in the standard tikkun. Megillah has 3 sheets. If you make it with 42 lines.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've concluded our class. It's 4 o'clock. So I'd like to thank Rabbi Shlomo Wernick for sharing with us and presenting us this great presentation about tefillin and mezuzahs. Rabbi Shlomo Wernick does sell mezuzahs and tefillin and Torah scrolls. So if anyone ever needs, he's here locally in Florida, but he ships as well. So if anyone is interested, Shlomo, is that true? Do you sell tefillin and mezuzahs? Is that correct?
We do. If you can
What do you
afford it.
specialize in? What is your main specialty?
Right now, I'm only doing the big ones. So if anyone's up for the big ones,
A big mezuzah?
big mezuzahs, big tefillin.
Uh-huh.
I have one quick question.
Yeah.
The question is, on the tefillin, the coating that you use to protect the leather, the coating on mine, not the black ink, but just a coating, it seems to be separating. Is there anything I can do for that?
I will just tell you, because I had a similar issue, Bruce, that there was a big thing going on here in the last like 2 years, a year ago, 2 years, no, maybe even more, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, where they were selling this they were selling the straps with ink that seemed to be separating in half, where like the shiny part of it was separating. Is that what the issue is, Bruce?
No, it's
Like
not the
shiny
ink.
part of,
No, it's not the ink to the leather. On top of the ink is like a clear coating.
Yeah,
That's what seems to be coming off.
the glass peels very often. Which is why nowadays it's becoming more and more popular to get a matte finish instead of a gloss finish.
Mhm.
All right. I thank you very much, Rabbi.
Sure.
Okay, take
Thank you very
care.
much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much,
Zygazon, thank
Rabbi.
you for joining us. We have this program every day. If anyone wants to join us every day, 3 o'clock to 4, Zygazon.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yashikar.
Thank you.
Thank you.